Good morning. That was okay, but we can do better. Good morning. Okay. My name is Sam Baumgarten. I am your lay worship leader for today's service, and I warmly welcome you to First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church in Bridgewater. I've been a member here approaching 37 years, and I am the only member and chair of the dance committee. Oh, that's just a joke. But I'm currently not serving on any church committees, but I'm very active in the local group, as you know, Bridgewater Communities for Civil Rights. What I like best about First Parish is the opportunity to do this, to be a lay leader, and the opportunity to occasionally lead the congregation in dance, which I suspect doesn't happen in many places, so I'm glad that I'm here and I can get to do that once in a while. Before we begin our time of worship, we have some announcements, some of which you've already seen or are in your order of service. Any church announcements for the next 2 weeks should be sent to Betty Gilson, as the church office will not be in operation. Michaela will be away. Also, as you probably already know, because of the risk of COVID, we are bypassing coffee hour today. There will be no coffee hour. We do have a church meeting at noontime, which is an important meeting for us, and it will still go on at noontime as scheduled. You are welcome to hang out here in the sanctuary for a while until that starts, or go outside for a while or whatever, but we will start at 12, and it will be on Zoom as well. Any other announcements that anybody might have that has not been brought up? Okay. So we will now begin our worship service. First Parish Bridgewater is a welcoming congregation. We proudly fly the rainbow flag to symbolize our welcome to people of every description. For families with young children visiting this morning, we welcome you to see an usher at the back of the sanctuary to receive one of our faith exploration boxes that are filled with creative activities that connect to our UU principles. On the first Sunday of each month, volunteer religious educators host a family chapel service in the upper parish hall for all young people and their family members, so mark your calendars for that. If you are new to First Parish, we hope you enjoy your experience this morning. We encourage you to sign the guest book on the table at the rear of the sanctuary, making sure to include your email address to receive our newsletter. For newcomers joining us online, there's a sign-up link in the chat. The service is being hosted via Zoom and recorded for Bridgewater Cable TV. The camera is turned off to protect your privacy during the sharing of joys and concerns. In the event of an emergency or evacuation drill, please leave the building through the main sanctuary doors in the rear, or should you need a ramp, through the School Street entrance to the side here, where a volunteer can help you. You are welcome here. Thank you for joining us. Your presence, whether in person or online, makes a difference. And now we will have our prelude.
Can I have this mic for a second? Hi, everybody. The prelude this morning is not what is printed in the program. Instead, I decided about 10 minutes ago to do a couple songs combined together by the late, great, amazing artist extraordinaire who has just made a lot of music that just really touched a generation of people and changed a lot of minds and hearts and everything. So these are two songs by David Crosby.
We'll now have our chalice lighting, and Reverend Jennifer will light the chalice, and we will recite the chalice lighting words, which are up on the screen. We light our chalice to mark this sacred hour as we gather in this beautiful historic sanctuary, both in body and in spirit. We connect to the many generations that have come here to explore the divine. Let us join our hearts and find more holy in our relationship to each other through this time to share worship together. Now, if you would rise in body or spirit to say the affirmation of our component and sing the aspiration. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is a gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak the truth in love, and to help one another.
To begin, a poem by Mary Oliver, followed by a brief reflection of my own. The summer day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? It's death that makes life wild, is it not? Death that brings danger, uncertainty, mystery, risk, alienation, fear, abandon. It's death that makes life precious too, is it not? Each life is inescapably finite, its gifts numbered, its pleasures fleeting, its exquisite beauty borrowed for just one too short lifetime. Wild and precious, and therefore fragile, I would add, to be handled with the greatest of care. Mortality is strangely paradoxical, for it is the central guiding fact of our existence, the one ultimate truth we know with certainty. Everything dies at last. And because we know this, we know that we need to handle our lives with care, to shape our lives with intention, purpose, and meaning, to savor its gifts with gratitude and reverence, to hold on to it firmly and tenderly, and when the time comes, to let it go, to let it go. is good to be with you, beloved friends. And those of you joining online, I know there are many more of you as we grapple with our fragility in this age of pandemic, and more among our community are dealing with COVID. It is good to be together. Let us lift our voice in song and join in singing number 34 in the gray hymnal, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. And the words are also in the chat for the Zoom folks.
Now is the time in the service for the sharing of joys and sorrows, those matters great and small that touch us, our families, and loved ones. Those of you attending online may share joys and sorrows by typing them in the website's chat section. Please come forward if you wish.
Breathe together, friends, the breath of life. Breath that may not be as full and deep as we would wish it to be, as so many of us are combating COVID and other respiratory illnesses, feeling in the very act of breathing the fragility of life, the tenuousness of our bodies, bodies that dance when they're well, bodies that celebrate, but also bodies that suffer. And we're so aware of that, I feel, today. Even as we so long to put COVID behind us, we also know that we are reminded daily that we're vulnerable, that we're fragile, that life is wild and precious. And so it is good to come together and extend our compassion and our empathy to one another, our care in ways tangible and ineffable, to know that we are held in love. So breathe as you are able in the way that best nourishes you, and hold all of what you've heard in that expansive space of your loving heart. Our service today is about mortality, about death, something so very central to our lives, our existence, as I mentioned in our opening words. So very fundamental and yet so hard to talk about. And it's been hard for me to put this together, hard for me to be before you knowing that people in this community are struggling with their own mortality in ways spiritual and physical every day. But it's here we come to do that sacred task of supporting each other in the joys and the sorrow, the strength and the vulnerability of what it means to be alive. And one of the things that we do as the living in the face of mortality is we remember, we hold on, we carry those who have lived and died before us in this world and let them guide us. And so for a prayer today, I want to offer you the litany of remembrance that is often shared in the Jewish tradition. It was written by Sylvan Kamens and Rabbi Jack Reamer. I am going to read an opening word and then gesture to you and invite you to share the refrain, which is, "We remember them." And as you say those words, I invite you to remember them, those who particularly have touched your lives, have made way for your lives, whose physical presence have left you, but whose spirits still companion you. A litany of remembrance. At the rising sun and at its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter,
we remember them.
At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring,
we remember them.
At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer,
we remember them.
At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of the autumn, at the beginning of the year, and when it ends. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us. When we are weary and in need of strength,
we remember them.
When we are lost and sick at heart,
we remember them.
When we have decisions that are difficult to make,
we remember them.
When we have joy we crave to share,
we remember them.
When we have achievements that are based on theirs,
we remember them.
For as long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us.
We remember them.
Amen. Please remain seated and join in singing a prayer familiar to many of us, number 123, Spirit of Life. Just gonna take a moment so I don't lose my papers like I did last time. It's a time in our service for our sacrament of generosity, when we give tangible expression to our faith values by the act of sharing of our material resources. Our plate giveaway supports the ministry of this congregation and the work in the world of a community organization that shares our values. The recipient of this month's Share the Plate donation is COPE, which is the group that will be leading a Narcan training next Sunday, January 29th, after the morning worship. Naloxone trainings are important for the public because the more widely distributed this medication is, the fewer fatal opioid overdoses that will occur. People will use it, and it will save lives. So I invite you now to give as generously as you are able to support the work of COPE and the ministry of First Parish Bridgewater. The morning's offering will now be given and gratefully received. Thank you, Tom. That was so beautifully and appropriately poignant. And thank you, Tony, for your musical contributions and for your memorial to David Crosby. Thanks for stepping in while Denise is at home taking on her turn with COVID. This morning I've structured the sermon a little differently. I'm going to offer it in two parts, and each part will be preceded by a reading. We'll have a break in the middle to take a breath and sing a song. The first reading is called Set in Stone. It's a meditation by Victoria Safford, a Unitarian Universalist minister whose writings I often share in worship. Set in Stone. In a cemetery once, an old one in New England, I found a strangely soothing epitaph. The name of the deceased and her dates had been scoured away by wind and rain, but there was a carving of a tree with roots and branches, and among them the words, "She attended well and faithfully to a few worthy things." At first, this seemed to me a little meager, a little stingy on the part of her survivors. But I wrote it down and have thought about it since, and now I can't imagine a more proud or satisfying legacy. Every day I stand in danger of being struck by lightning and having the obituary in the local newspaper say, for all the world to see, she attended frantically and ineffectually to a great many unimportant, meaningless details. How do you want your obituary to read? He got all the dishes washed and dried before playing with the children in the evening. She balanced her checkbook with meticulous precision and never missed a day of work. Missed a lot of sunsets, missed a lot of love, missed a lot of risk, missed a lot, but her money was in order. She answered all her calls, all her email, all her voicemail, but along the way, she forgot to answer the call to service and compassion and forgiveness, first and foremost of herself. He gave and forgave sparingly, without radical intention, without passion or conviction. She could not or would not hear the calling of her heart. How will it read? How does it read? And if you had to name a few worthy things to which you attend well and faithfully, what, I wonder, would they be? So ends our reading. In his senior year of high school, my husband Dave, who knows I'm talking about him this morning and is actually present on Zoom, was voted most likely to succeed. He was a capable student, a good athlete, and most of all, a genuinely and widely liked person. It's not surprising that his high school peers viewed him as primed for success. Dave is also modest, so he didn't take the superlative very seriously. Deep down, though, it made him anxious. Would he live up to his classmates' expectations? What did it even mean to succeed? Back in high school, Dave envisioned what the capitalist machine would have us believe: wealth and status, fancy cars, that big house with an ocean view. Fast forward some 3 decades, and Dave's life bears little resemblance to that image of material success. Have you seen his car? Or mine? The truth is, none of those things have ever truly motivated him. Yet Dave is successful. The success he has achieved thus far can be summed up in the same words that Victoria Safford came upon during her ramble in that old New England cemetery. He has attended well and faithfully to a few worthy things in these first 50 years of his life. I'm getting ahead of myself. He has a month to go. Like Safford, I take those words, he attended well and faithfully to a few worthy things, I take those words as high praise. More than anyone I know, Dave is driven by a solid understanding of what matters most in his life. He never seems to experience the episodes of despair and nihilism in which I have been known to indulge. Of course, we're different people with different personalities. It takes all types, but I think there's more to it. When Dave was 7 years old, his father died of esophageal cancer. The illness was brief. Death came hard and fast, leaving Dave, his 2 preteen sisters, and their 35-year-old mother, shocked and traumatized, not to mention economically insecure. The adults in Dave's life thought it best not to talk too much about the death in front of him. They mistakenly rationalized that in time, Dave wouldn't remember his father. Somehow, forgetting would shield him from grief. Instead, the death of Dave's father loomed constantly, yet silently, through his young life, a paradoxically empty presence. Dave grew up keenly aware of what he most valued and lost when his father died: the playful affection, the praise and pride and guidance, the sense of stability and security their father provided for his family, the hope for a better future, the simple daily joys of their life together. I'm convinced that the experience of death at such an early age cemented Dave's understanding of what matters most to him. And he has lived his life accordingly, attending well and faithfully to those worthy things, being a playful, proud, and present parent to our daughters, a steadfast partner to me, a dependable member of his communities. A few worthy things. Earlier than most, Dave had to face the truth that all of us must confront eventually. As Mary Oliver put it, doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Life is finite. As living beings, we are inescapably mortal. When we confront this core truth, we understand that the possibilities for our individual lives are finite too. We can't be everything, nor do everything, nor have everything that we may want. We have to make difficult choices. We have to face the truth of mortality head on. And when we do, we are more apt to make those choices with intention and agency in accordance with our deepest values. If you had to name a few worthy things to which you attend well and faithfully, what would they be? Victoria Safford asks. In the same vein, Mary Oliver writes, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" Maybe it's because I have a daughter in college and one on her way, but these questions remind me of the daunting prompts for the dreaded college application essay. At 17 or 18, young people are supposed to have it all figured out, all mapped out, buckets of self-awareness and a sense of purpose far beyond their purview. But I don't think Mary Oliver and Victoria Safford intended their questions to be asked and answered just once, neatly laid out in concise paragraphs. Rather, their questions are meant to be returned to, revisited again and again, yearly, monthly, perhaps even daily, to help us navigate our way on the winding roads of our wild and precious lives, even when we know we may be approaching our last breaths. What matters most to you in the life that you have left to live, however long or short that may be? How will you spend your precious vitality on this day? The answers are meant to evolve as we each adapt to the changing circumstances and stages of our particular lives. Perhaps, like all answers, they matter less than the questions themselves. What matters most is that we ask them in earnest. There are understandable reasons why Dave's adult relatives shied away from talking about his father's death with him when he was a small boy. It can be so very hard to talk about death, and achingly sad, lonely, scary. That's why we face it here in church, because it is in this space that we come to ask the hard questions and feel the hard feelings. Here, our grief and fear, our heartache and our loneliness are welcome. Here we seek comfort. Here we reach out for the sacred in all the ways that we understand it, to seek communion of our souls with that which is greater than us, that which sustains us and comforts us and binds us to this life and one another. Often the sacred comes to us in song, so we are going to pause now to invoke the sacred in our shared singing. The hymn is number 86 in the gray hymnal. Blessed Spirit of my life, please remain seated and lend your precious voice to our song. Our second reading is an excerpt from the book Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. Dr. Gawande is a renowned surgeon and an author, a public health expert, and with the publication of Being Mortal, he became one of the most prolific and well-known advocates for palliative care, for addressing the questions of why we live, how we wish to live, and how we wish to die. This excerpt is from the epilogue. Being mortal is about the struggle to cope with the constraints of our biology, with the limits set by genes, cells, and flesh and bone. Medical science has given us remarkable power to push against these limits, and the potential value of this power was a central reason I became a doctor. But again and again, I have seen the damage we in medicine do when we fail to acknowledge that such power is finite and always will be. We've been wrong about what our job is in medicine. We think our job is to ensure health and survival, but really it is larger than that. It is to enable well-being, and well-being is about the reasons one wishes to be alive. These reasons matter not just at the end of life or when debility comes, but all along the way. Whenever serious sickness or injury strikes and your body or mind breaks down, the vital questions are the same. What is your understanding of the situation and its potential outcomes? What are your fears and what are your hopes? What are the trade-offs you are willing to make and not willing to make? And what is the course of action that best serves this understanding? So ends the reading. As their firstborn child approached her first birthday, Myra Sack and Matt Goldstein came face to face with that finite power of medical science to which Gawande alludes in the reading I just shared. Their beautiful, wide-eyed daughter, Javi, didn't seem to be developing normally, wasn't meeting many of the expected milestones of infancy. Eventually, they sought care from a pediatric neurologist at Boston's Children's Hospital. Less than a week later, the young parents got devastating news. Javi had Tay-Sachs disease, a rare and incurable neurological disease that is fatal. Tay-Sachs is passed genetically from parent to child and is prevalent among people of Ashkenazi Jewish heritage. Most expectant parents of Ashkenazi descent are routinely screened for Tay-Sachs. I was. And so were Myra and Matt. Both parents need to be carriers to pass the disease to the child. And Matt was not a carrier, so they had been told. But a terrible mistake had been made. There is no cure for Tay-Sachs, nor any treatment that can extend life. Most children do not live past 4 years of age, if that. There is very little medical science can do for children with Tay-Sachs. So the questions at hand for Myra and Matt were not about which cures or treatments to pursue for Javi. Rather, they asked themselves how they would spend the short time they had together with her. What would they plan to do with Javi's one wild and precious life? So precious. Myra and Matt answered that question in a remarkable way. They decided that they would celebrate Javi's beautiful life with as much joy, as much love as they could muster with all of the people in their lives who cherished Javi. Observant Jews, they decided that each Friday evening, every week, as long as Javi lived, on Shabbat, they would have a birthday party for Javi, what they called a Shabirthday. A lifetime of birthdays in just over a year. Myra described Javi's first Shabirthday in an article for the Boston Globe magazine last June, where I learned their story. 3 days after discovering Javi had a year or so to live, we celebrated. A group of aunts, uncles, grandparents, and dear friends descended on our home for Javi's first Shabirthday. Javi's posse, as they'd come to be called, knew instinctively the best thing they could do was show up. They followed our lead, and no one pretended that the heartache wasn't there. They showered her with gifts, a onesie, cake and balloons, a plush toy avocado, her first food, which was bigger and wider than she, a warm challah, and an elegant gray dress with white leggings, her first Shabirthday outfit. Javi loved every minute of it. Our home felt full and warm that night. Everyone stayed close to each other as the Shabbat candles flickered and the reality of Javi's illness swirled around us. We didn't have to pretend our pain away with fake smiles, nor did we need to hide from honest joy and laughter that can come from the deepest, most painful places. That night, she never left the arms or lap of someone who loved her. Myra and Matt and Javi's posse repeated their birthday ritual 56 times before Javi succumbed to her disease. Javi's birthday parties didn't lessen the terrible pain of her absence after her death, but that was never the point. The point was to help Javi live with as much joy and love and sweetness as was possible in the too short span of her wild and precious life. To help her live a vital and good life, even in the looming face of death. Javi's family didn't have the medical choices that many of us will have or already have had in the face of life-threatening illness. Many of us will want and will benefit from or have already benefited from life-saving and life-extending treatments. Make no mistake, these are a blessing worthy of our profound gratitude. Yet our healthcare system remains reluctant to acknowledge that its power, the power to push against the limits of mortality, is and always will be infinite, as Gawande put it. At some point, like Javi, we all will have to face our end. And so it is imperative that we ask ourselves the questions that Mary Oliver and Victoria Safford posed, the questions that Myra and Matt asked themselves on Javi's behalf, the questions that Atul Gawande poses to readers and his patients. What is your understanding of the situation and its potential outcomes? What are your fears and what are your hopes? What are the trade-offs you are willing to make and not willing to make? And what is this course of action that best serves this understanding? Your understanding of the few good things that make your life meaningful. Your understanding of what makes your life, your wild and precious life, worth living. These questions are hard to ask and even harder to answer, because it can be so very hard to talk about death, and achingly sad, lonely, scary. But you've braved such conversations before. Several years ago, many of you engaged the 5 wishes approach to advanced care planning. 5 Wishes is a holistic model that leads participants carefully through the kinds of questions that Atul Gawande asks and more. When I return from my brief medical leave in mid-February, I will be offering 2 sessions to introduce and engage with the 5 Wishes approach. Our dear friend Eileen Heine will join me as a co-facilitator. Eileen and her husband, dear Frank, completed 5 Wishes the last time it was offered. When Frank's health took a sudden and frightening turn that ultimately caused his death, that so many of us still hold so tenderly, last spring, Eileen was able to draw on Frank's carefully articulated wishes to communicate with his care team. And she has testified to the sense of empowerment she experienced because she had access to Frank's thoughtful answers and was able to honor his values and wishes as best as she could. I hope many of you will join the conversation, because it is in this space, this church, this community of beloveds, that we come to ask the hard questions of life and feel the hard feelings of living. Here, our grief, our fear, our heartache and loneliness are welcome. Here we seek comfort. Here we reach out for the sacred, to seek communion of our souls with that which is greater than us, that which sustains us, comforts us, and binds us to this life and one another. It's time to sing again, a song that confronts our mortality at the same time that it invokes the sacred source of comfort we need to face it. It was written by the father of gospel music, Thomas Dorsey, and so it uses his language for the sacred. With gospel music, Dorsey married the themes of African American spirituality, themes of faith, hope, and affirmation to the syncopated rhythms of the secular genre of blues. In Dorsey's hardest hour, in the throes of grief after his wife and son died in childbirth, Dorsey turned to his piano for comfort, and this song came to him. Number 199 in the Gray Hymnal, Precious Lord, Take My Hand. Let us close as we opened with the poetry and wisdom of Mary Oliver. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends upon it. And when the time comes to let it go, let it go. Sing Amen. We'll extinguish the chalice together with the traditional words that are on the screen.
But not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we
Have you ever felt it could all go away if you blink? If you never stop running, then you won't fall behind, or so you think. And you wonder in your heart if you're still not who you are. Who are you? Nothing's as it seems till it all falls apart. If you have a dream, go chase it. If you feel hope, don't waste it. If you find love, embrace it. Never take a single breath for granted. The story's yours, go write it. Tomorrow's undecided. Our days are counted on this planet. Never take a single breath, take a single breath for granted. Oh, maybe it's time you bet on yourself. Listen to your heart, just listen to your heart and nobody else. And go find out who you are, only you know who you are. Who are you? 'Cause nothing changes till it all falls away. If you have a dream, go chase it. If you feel hope, don't waste it. If you find love, embrace it. And never take a single breath for granted. The story's yours, go write it. Tomorrow's undecided. Our days are counted on this planet. So never take a single breath, take a single breath for granted. And maybe the greatest moments we'll ever know are when we're letting go. So let go. And maybe the brightest days still wait for us in the unknown. If you have a dream, go chase it. If you feel hope, don't waste it. If you find love, embrace it. And never take a single breath for granted. The light, go find it. The story's yours, go write it. Our days are counted on this planet. So never take a single breath, take a single breath for granted.
Our sacrament of worship has ended. Blessing of our fellowship will begin. We're not going to have coffee hour today, but we are still together. Please greet those among you. And know too that fellowship is not something extra. It's why we're here, and it's how we have these hard conversations and get through this difficult work of being alive and facing our mortality. Also know that if you are thinking hard thoughts or feeling hard feelings, I'm available. You can call me even when I'm off next week. I will return your call. This is how we get through together. Blessings, beloved.
Not good enough.